Hey, good evening YouTube. It's me, Chris, and you're watching Coins in the Wild. Tonight's video is kind of a controversial topic. It's about artificial intelligence and coin grading. And I wanted to make this video tonight. It was something I was thinking about this week, and I've actually kind of thought about off and on for some time. So I did a little research, went online, watched a couple of videos regarding coin grading and artificial intelligence. Probably videos that you've watched. One is by Daniel at Coin Help You, and the other is with Ben the Coin Geek over down in Arizona. Now, I don't know either of them. I do watch both of those channels on a regular basis and enjoy their commentary and the coins and different things that they tips and suggestions that they give to be successful in coin grading. And so I thank you to both of them. But the reason why I wanted to make this video is because the subject of artificial intelligence and coin grading is attempting to solve a problem. And it's a problem about consistency in coin grading. But really, that was the whole point of, when we think about it, the whole point of it, having companies like PCGS and NGC establish a baseline so that coins were graded more consistently. But I think actually the problem is a little bit bigger, and I think one of those programs, Ben the Coin Geek, kind of alluded to that. It's more important to take a bird's eye view. If you look at just the idea of solving the inconsistency in grading, that may really not require going so far as to use artificial intelligence to solve that problem. I get the idea that we want a more neutral, unbiased opinion. There's no financial motivation or financial incentive behind a coin being graded, and I get that. I really do. And maybe that's the answer, is to have some sort of impartial way of having coins graded. And there are so many things that come into play when it comes to grading a coin. I heard earlier, watching the videos, that one of the things that happens is if one individual is grading coins for a number of hours a day, eventually what happens is your eyes start to play tricks on you. And I think that's very true. Our eyes can start to play tricks on us eventually. And throughout the day, I'm sure that happens to different coin graders. I'd like to hear what PCGS and NGC have to say about what they do to alleviate the eye strain on their, I'm assuming their employees that do the grading for the company. And, to be fair to them, one of the things that they will mention is that oftentimes a coin will go through more than one set of hands or more than one set of eyes before a coin is actually given a specific grade. So it isn't that it's just one person's opinion, but it's a consensus of, I'm assuming, 2 or 3 individuals, and then they make that decision on what grade a coin should receive. But I think part of the problem is there's been, in trying to solve the coin grading problem, there was another problem that was created, and that was attaching a monetary value to the grade of a coin. Once that happened, the incentive was no longer to grade a coin fairly, but to grade a coin in such a way as that it would actually create monetary value for an investor. Now, here's the problem that I see with that. I'm going to use 2 examples. You probably see in the video right now, I've got this publication in front of me, How to Make Money in Coins Right Now. This is a famous publication. This is the 7th edition. It's a few years old. I got this from the public library the other day, and it's a book that I've read mostly through before. This is not my first time with this book. In fact, the reason I checked it out was to finish the last third of the book so I can get a better sense of what the author was suggesting. But before I get to that, I want to get to 2 examples of coins, because one of the things that we fail to consider when we're talking about coin grading is coin preservation. Now, many coins that are sought after today are coins that are 100, 200 years old, coins that are gold, silver, coins that have historical significance. But those coins were preserved at a time when coin grading, and specifically putting coins in slabs, was not available. And that changed the dynamic of everything. It's one thing to assign a grade to a coin. It's one thing to determine this coin meets a certain standard. Let's just say MS61 or MS65 as a standard. It's one thing to do that. It's quite another thing to encapsulate a coin and then preserve it for generations. When early coin collectors, this hobby, if you go back, this hobby is known as the hobby of kings or the sport of kings. And the reason is that back in earlier times, and I use this coin as an example, this is an 1826 Great Britain 1 shilling, Mint State 61. If you've watched my videos, you've seen this coin before. When these coins were originally preserved, for example, this silver shilling, this was at a time when people, ordinary people, couldn't afford to set coins like this aside. I mean, this coin is in absolute stunning condition. Who knows where this coin was originally obtained from? Was it in some king's private collection or somebody that was in government that got an early coin from the mint press, or however they produced coins at that time? This wasn't from a common person. This was a coin that was preserved by somebody who was most likely in the government or a royalty, and was passed on down the line, and that it eventually ended up in the hands of a collector who sent it into NGC, and then they encapsulated and assigned a grade to this coin. So assigning a grade to the coin is one thing, but encapsulating the coin is quite another, because the encapsulation has only occurred in the last 20 or 30 years, and I can't remember when NGC got its start. I read the book, but I just couldn't tell you today. But the point is that this coin was preserved for over 100 years, maybe 150 years, more than 150 years, without ever being encapsulated, and that's what created value for the collector today. But when we encapsulate modern coins, say for example 2019 coins, we encapsulate them right off the press, and that's why you see there's hundreds and hundreds of examples, sometimes thousands, in the research that I was doing yesterday, of coins that are in Mint State 70 and Proof 70 condition. That was something that was not available to early production or early collectors of coins back in, let's just use it as an example, the 1800s. That was something that just wasn't available. They could probably put it in a soft cloth. They could keep it somewhere safe. They might have been able to a degree keep it away from moisture. But beyond that, they couldn't do anything to preserve this coin. They didn't have plastic to seal something up in, and who knows? I'd like to hear about how they actually preserved coins back then. But let's get back to our discussion and why we're talking about this today, because the idea is that could we use artificial intelligence to solve some of the problems with coin grading? And I actually think that coin grading itself has created a number of problems that didn't exist 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It's true, as more collectors got into the market and more people were interested in coin collecting, that created this need for coins to be assigned a certain grade, because collectors wanted to know that they had the best specimen available, or they wanted to know where their specimen stood in relation to others. But remember, though, that this problem with coin grading grew out of the point that people were big into coins. And I'm going to go back guesstimating just a little bit, so please forgive me if my dates are wrong. But late 1970s, early 80s, many people were getting into the coin market. The coin market was hot, it was building a bubble, and people didn't really know what they were buying. So people started to assign these coin companies, or these coin companies developed, and they started to develop a grading system, and then they used the grading system to assign a value to the coin. And it was listed, and I don't know, I'm not explaining it entirely right. Somebody developed the grading system by itself, and then these other companies came along and found a way to make a business out of it, you might say. But that's the problem. The problem was when we were assigning a numerical grade to a coin, it was never to make a business out of the hobby of coin collecting. And that's part of the problem. When the people that collected these early specimens of coins, and here's a 1963 Franklin half, when these early specimens of coins were collected, they were not collected with the idea that somehow somebody was going to make a business out of coin collecting. So the coin grading companies came along, they made a business out of coin collecting and assigning grades to it, and then what happens? Well, the advent of the internet, You've got eBay, you have Amazon, you have Heritage Auctions, you've got a number of other different places. And nothing against Heritage. Heritage provides a fine service. I buy coins through them. But the point is that they made a business out of buying and selling coins. And so now it went from a hobby where people were collecting coins to a hobby where people were trying to use the numerical value used to determine the grade of a coin or the quality of a coin, or I don't want to say value because it's not the value, determine the quality of the coin, the quality of the specimen that you have, and then they equated that with a monetary value. And then that's where this book comes in. So let me know your thoughts on that, because it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. I actually think that using artificial intelligence to grade coins will actually create an even bigger problem than you had in the past. And let me give you an example. So these are two interesting examples. These two coins were graded at a time, or were obtained at a time, when artificial intelligence was not available. So how do you go back to the millions and millions of coins that have been graded and go back and assign them a grade using artificial intelligence? I can tell you that there will be upteenth lawsuits over the coins, and I would imagine if PCGS and NGC they're probably, knowing that they're in the coin grading business, they're probably well ahead of the curve on developing a technology like this. And so the fact that we're talking about it now, we're actually coming to the table late with this idea. And the reason why they would be developing this type of a platform early on was to protect themselves in the event of a lawsuit. So somebody comes along and produces a product that does a very, very good job. Let's assume for all intents and purposes, 99.98% accuracy of assigning coins a proper grade. And then you take all of the older specimens that PCGS and NGC graded for 30 some odd years, 40 years almost, and you bring them back to the table and you reassign them grades. I can't tell you how many people, how many serious collectors will turn around and sue these companies for improperly grading coins. And it doesn't matter what the paper says, well, they signed a contract, this and that. I don't talk about what I do for a living on the channel, I'm not going to, but I will say to some extent that I read contracts all day long. That's a part of my job. And I can tell you right now that any contract can be pierced. If there any good lawyer can find a way to break a contract. And that's just how it goes. In fact, probably the wisest thing with artificial technology coming up on the horizon, you might say, the wisest thing that PCGS and NGC could do is actually